Hello and welcome to an In Conversation With. My name is Emma Smith and I'm the project manager with Empowered Conversations, which is a project of Age UK Salford. And I am absolutely delighted to be in conversation today with Helen Rhodes from Fifth Sense. So Helen, thank you for giving your time today.
Okay.
So I'm really excited to find out. We've had a chat this week and I'm just so excited about this webinar. If you haven't been here before, welcome. I'll give you a little bit of background about Empowered Conversations, then we'll move over to Helen for her presentation, and then we'll come back for questions and answers. So where you've all just been put in, I haven't got pets, Jack Russell, I've pegged out, that's where you'll drop your questions. So at any point, drop your questions in there. We won't pick them up until after Helen's finished their presentation. But rather than think, oh, I must remember that question, just write them in and then we will get to them, I promise you. So if you haven't come across Empowered Conversations before, we empower families affected by dementia to live as well as they can with their dementia. And we do that by delivering communication courses. So we have Empowered Conversations and we have Moving Beyond Words. We also offer one-to-one dementia-focused therapeutic support through Empowered Carers. We do these regular webinars and we have a monthly carers group, that's Carers Voice Group, and we also have a bereavement group, and we work across Greater Manchester. So that's who we are. I don't think I need to say anything else other than I will start the presentation. Yeah, if you have any questions, pop them in. I'm going to start the presentation and I'm going to hand over. I'm going to hand over to you. Wait a minute. I said I'm going to start the presentation. There we go.
Perfect.
Hand over to you, Helen. Be quiet.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So yes, I'm Helen. I work for the charity Fifth Sense, and I'm going to talk to you today about the impact of smell and taste disorders, in particular in relation to people that may be living with dementia, but actually there are lots of other reasons why people's smell and taste might be affected. Okay. She says, that's it. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is I'll give you a little bit of information about who we are as a charity, what smell and taste disorders are. So I've put smell up there, but I'm going to also touch on taste, causes, prevalence, and what that could mean to you and the people that are around you. Some of the safeguarding concerns, a little bit of information around hints, tips, ideas, and the support that we offer as a charity. And then, as Emma said, any questions you may have at the end, we can go through. If I don't know the answer, I normally know somebody that does, so I can always come back to you. Okay. She says, is that going to move on?
It's moved on for us.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
No, it hasn't moved on for me. Okay. That's all right. I can remember them off by heart, probably. Why has that not moved on? Okay. So who we are as a charity then. So we were started in 2012 by Duncan, our chief exec. Now, he actually started the charity because he had a head injury. It's 20 years ago, actually, this year. And he lost his sense of smell. And head injuries, oh, do you know what? I think it's my internet.
I think so. You've frozen, but your voice is coming through. So what I can do is I can move the slides on.
Yes, perfect. If you do, can you still hear me?
We can hear you really clearly, yes.
Okay.
And you haven't got a funny face on your frozen picture, so that's good.
Okay. So if you can move the slide, okay,
yeah.
So starting 2012 by Duncan, had a head injury, lost his sense of smell, and there was nobody out there to help him. And so through some research, he came across Professor Carl Philpott, who is a professor of olfactology and rhinology, which specialises in predominantly smell, but also taste. And they set the charity up because they wanted somewhere for people to go to get support if they needed it, unlike when Duncan needed it and there was nobody around. Because one of the problems we have is that there's no training on this in the NHS unless it's your specialist subject. And we cover 3 areas. We cover support and information. Oh, there we go. I'm back. Support and information, education and engagement, which is the work that I do, which is why I'm here talking to you today. Basically, anybody that will listen to me. And we get involved in research as well. So research in taste is very limited. There's more research now in smell, but we get involved in that as well. And we want olfactory dysfunction, which are smell disorders. to actually be seen as a long-term health condition. They are sometimes linked to other long-term health conditions, but on its own, it's not recognised in the same way that eyesight and hearing impairment are. So that's sort of our mission, really. If you can go on to the next slide, hopefully it'll work. Okay, so I'm going to talk mainly about smell today. I'm going to talk about taste as well, but true taste disorders are very, very rare because it's a lot harder to damage your taste buds. So we talk about smell in particular, about being one of our neglected senses. And if you've ever been affected yourself, say through COVID, or through anything else, or you know people that might be affected if they're living with dementia, or for any of the other reasons when I come on to the other causes, it's thinking about how neglected our sense of smell and taste can be. But if you can't smell, you can't, or your smell's distorted, you can't smell smoke from a fire, you can't smell gas leaks, you can't smell if food's gone off. So it's really common for people to get food poisoning. So there are safeguarding concerns there. But also it's the impact on someone's well-being and health when you're unable to engage with food and drink in the same way. And I'll talk about why that is in a moment. Going for that walk, when you can't smell, or you're out in the garden, or you go for a walk, you just get nothing from your environment. So people talk about the fact that makes the world a very flat place, but it can again affect how people feel about their well-being. But also we subconsciously bond through our sense of smell with partners, children, and friends as well.
Ooh.
Oh, it's working for me now. So what are smell and taste disorders? So as I mentioned earlier, olfactory dysfunction are smell disorders. So there are 5 common ones that we talk about. So anosmia is your complete inability to smell, and hypoosmia is reduced. Now the next 3 have become more talked about, but have always been around because of long COVID. So parosmia is where people are able to smell, but actually what they smell is really unpleasant. So for example, chicken can smell like sewage to somebody that has parosmia. People talk about going to barbecues and the meat that's being cooked on the barbecue smells like sewage, and it can physically make people feel sick. Perfume, beauty products can smell like burnt rubber. So again, really unpleasant. So people can smell, but what they smell is really unpleasant. Now, what that also does is it affects the flavour of their food as well, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then you can have phantosmia, which are phantom smells, or as myself and Emma were talking about, smell hallucinations, which can obviously impact on people that are living with dementia, but can affect anybody. And this is where people smell things that nobody else can. So they can smell smoke and think there's a fire, but nobody else can smell that. So I know people with long COVID that have a smell of burnt toast in their nose and it never goes away, but there's no burnt toast. So it's things that can cause people to become anxious, especially if it's smoke, or just something that's really irritating all the time. And then you have hyperosmia, so high sensitivity to smells. And this can again affect people that are living with dementia, people that are neurodiverse. And everything smells as it should, but it's just really strong. So the most common ones people talk about are coffee, onions, garlic, red meat. And again, a bit like with parosmia, they can smell them. They smell the way they should, but they smell so strong that again, it can make people feel physically sick. And it again can affect the flavour of their food. And then you can also have taste disorders. Now you can have a smell disorder and still taste with your 5 tastes and your taste buds. Or you can have a taste disorder and still smell, and you can have both. And again, if somebody is living with dementia, it could be dependent on which part of their brain has been affected. But you can have a complete inability to taste, you can have distorted taste, phantom tastes, high sensitivity in the same way you can with your smell as well. So just to talk a little bit about smell, taste and flavour. Now I used to work for the Alzheimer's Society, and if I'd known what I know now, it would have helped me with some of the conversations I used to have with carers that used to talk to me about sort of the way that the people that they were supporting, their loved ones, were engaging with food and drink. So when we smell something, goes up through our nose into our olfactory bulb. So let's say it's a cup of coffee in front of you. If you can smell, you can smell that coffee. Now, when we drink food, drink a drink, eat food, drink a drink, and we're chewing the food and we're swallowing the food and drink, we actually are smelling it through the back of our throat, and then it then goes back up into our olfactory bulb. And that's how we get flavour from our food. So our taste buds give us our 5 basic tastes. So sweet, salt, sour, bitter, and savoury. But our smell gives us the flavour. So if you imagine that cup of coffee, you smell the coffee, take the drink, you swallow the coffee. If you can't smell, you wouldn't smell the coffee and you wouldn't get any coffee flavour. What you may get, if your taste buds are working and there's natural sugar in the coffee, you may get the sweetness of the sugar in the coffee, and you may get the bitterness of the coffee bean, but you won't get any coffee flavour. So what that means is people can be drawn to different foods that they maybe never ate before. They can suddenly decide they don't like certain foods because they don't get any flavour from them. And that's why sometimes when somebody is living with dementia, it can change the way they engage with food and with drink as well. So smell and taste disorders, I'm here talking to you today due to dementia, but there are lots of other reasons why somebody's smell or taste could be affected. Already mentioned COVID-19, but viral infections have always generally had some sort of impact on someone's smell or taste and can have lasting impact. We have members that have had flu and their sense of smell has never come back. They think up to 1 million people in the UK still have long COVID. Therefore, they will not be able to smell. Sinonasal disorders, allergies, chronic rhinosinusitis is a really common one. Head injuries, as I mentioned earlier. So Duncan, our chief exec, had his head injury. His sense of smell's never come back. They reckon between 10 to 40% of people that have a head injury lose their sense of smell, and not all of them get it back. Aging process. So unfortunately, like our other senses, our sense of smell and taste can diminish with age. What they actually think is that 1 in 4 people over the age of 65 may have a reduced or no sense of smell or taste. The difference with smell and taste is, unlike eyesight and hearing, we don't check that. We don't do regular testing for it. So with the aging process, it could be quite a slow process where you don't notice that it's disappearing until maybe you start realising you've seen a change in your eating habits, or you suddenly can't smell something. Certain medication, certain operations, certain cancer treatments, certain cancers, certainly tongue cancer, head, neck and throat cancers can have a huge impact, not just on smell, but on taste. Neurodegenerative, so you may or may not be aware that our loss of sense of smell can be one of the earliest symptoms of Alzheimer's, way before any other symptoms happen, sometimes years before. Same with Parkinson's. And then people generally with, I mean, obviously you'll be aware there are so many different types of dementia, but people with dementia generally can sometimes develop a smell or a taste disorder. Exposure to toxins. So there was a survey done with firefighters in Chicago, and they tested their sense of smell, and due to the work they do, and the toxins that they sort of come across, nearly 50% of them had a smell disorder. People surviving stroke, really common to have a smell or taste disorder. Epilepsy can cause smell disorders. There's actually a group of people out there with a smell or taste disorder, and we don't know why, and that's because of the lack of research. We call that idiopathic. And then there's actually people that are born without a sense of smell or taste, or a memory of ever being able to smell or taste. So we call them congenital anosmics if they have no smell at all or no when they're born. And for them, they don't actually know what they're missing. So how it affects them, how they engage with the world is very different to somebody that has lost it. So what that means is that it could be affecting people living with dementia. It could be affecting you, it could be affecting family, it could be affecting friends. And as I say, up to 1 million people potentially in the UK still have COVID-19. That's just one of the reasons why it might be happening to people. So how could it affect somebody that is living with these sensory impairments? And this could be somebody living with dementia, or it could be a carer, because if you think about the aging process as well. A lot of this, again, links to smell, but they put the smell into gas so that if there's a gas leak, you can smell it for safety. If you can't smell, your smell's impaired, you can't smell a gas leak. You might see that somebody suddenly doesn't want to do things that they used to love doing that involve smell, like walks, gardening, hobbies like cooking. You know, if you can't smell a cake baking, is it the same? Also, if you have somebody with cognitive impairment with a gas cooker, they might turn the gas on, walk away, forget to light it. And if they can't smell the gas, or the people that live in the house can't smell the gas, again, you've got a safeguarding concern. You may see changes to personal hygiene, and that can be that somebody can become really obsessive about, do I smell? So they're changing clothes quite regularly, constantly putting deodorant on. That's quite a common thing, makes people quite anxious. Or you might see the flip side, where somebody suddenly isn't as hygienic as they used to be because they don't think they smell. Toxic fumes while cleaning. You know, when I had COVID and I was cleaning and I couldn't smell bleach. Now, I couldn't smell, so why would I be able to smell bleach? But it's just that realization that cleaning products give off fumes, and if your smell's impaired, then those toxic fumes, you don't know how strong they are because you're not aware of how much product you're using. Not being able to tell if food's gone off, so it's really common for somebody with a smell disorder to give themselves food poisoning, because if you look at milk, you look at chicken, you look at fish, you smell that it's gone off before you actually see that it's gone off. I delivered this to a dementia team for Age UK actually in Hereford and Worcester, and they just spoke to a carer that said, my dad keeps giving himself food poisoning, but he says his food's fine, and it's because he couldn't smell it. As I mentioned earlier, a smell disorder can mean either really unpleasant flavour or no flavour at all to somebody's food. So what you might see is somebody's eating habits change. And this is where, if I'd known this, it might have helped me when I was a dementia support worker, that suddenly they want to eat salty foods. They really want salty crisps. They don't care what flavour they are because they don't get the flavour. They suddenly develop a really sweet tooth that they never had before. Highly processed foods that have got a lot of sweetness in them, got a lot of salt added to them, which can mean that they can have an unhealthy a diet as well, because they just want to eat things they can taste, and they're the taste that they get, so that's what they're drawn to. Some people stop eating altogether, especially if they've got parosmia, or even if they've got phantom smells going on. If it's affecting the flavour of their food, they might go, well, I just don't want to eat anymore. If they've got a taste disorder as well as a smell disorder, they won't be able to get any enjoyment out of their food, so that's why they might stop eating. You can't smell if something's burning. But also, our sense of smell is the most closely linked sense to the part of our brain that triggers our memories. So just talking about the washing earlier, without our sense of smell, or with a distorted sense of smell, it's another thing that stops us triggering memories for us. So you lose that ability to trigger memories, the smell of cut grass or the smell you get at Christmas. You lose those triggers that take you back to different parts of your life. Now, I can send an electronic leaflet out so you can share this, or I can send some hard copies out. But some of the things we talk about is the importance of staying safe, warm and independent if you have a smell or taste disorder. And I'm conscious that a lot of times somebody may have a smell disorder and it's linked to another health condition. So you may already be aware of the Priority Services Register, but if you're not, there's lots of reasons, but an impaired sense of smell classes you as vulnerable. So to go on the Priority Services Register, and I'll send these links across to you, Emma, is really important. So, you know, people that are living with dementia, people of pensionable age, there's lots of different reasons to go on this. It's free, and it means that if you have an interruption in any of your utilities, or you have a gas leak, or you have different communication needs, you get given priority service over somebody that's not on that register. The other thing that you can have fitted, especially if somebody has cognitive impairment, and they do this for free, the Cadent, who are the gas distribution network, is a locking cooker valve on a gas cooker. So if you have somebody that has the habit of turning the gas on and walking away, you can have this valve fitted, which means you can stop that from happening, so it keeps them safe in the kitchen. Very easy to turn on and off when you need to, though, if you're using it. Although some appliances do have their own cut-off, but if they don't, that's where the locking cooker valve comes in. Carbon monoxide detectors are obviously important if you have gas anyway, because you can't smell that, so they're really important. Smoke detectors, important, but if you can't smell, even more so. But natural gas detectors, not as readily available, but you can get them online, relatively inexpensive. But if you have somebody with a smell disorder and they've got gas appliances, they need a gas detector, so that if there's a gas leak, then it gets picked up before anything bad happens, because we've had lots of near misses with a lot of our members. They talk about it where they just didn't know, and somebody's gone, don't turn the switch on, don't light that thing because there's gas in the room. And the other one is to keep your gas appliances in good condition and get them serviced regularly. Now, that there's a cost attached to that. Again, Cadent, the gas distribution network, who cover your area, do offer this service for free to customers that have gas appliances of their own that they own. There's certain criteria to meet, but if somebody is living with dementia and they have a reduced council tax, that is one of the criteria. So again, I'll send this link out, but free gas servicing is really important to keep your gas appliance safe. So it's making you aware that some people can get that for free as well, and it's not something people are aware of. So there's lots of information on our website, on our recipes, but again, it's just getting you to think about, if somebody's smell is impaired, how do they engage with food and enjoy it in a different way? So we talk about concentrating on all the senses, concentrating on foods with strong defined textures, so that's a different sense, looking at colour, thinking of things like having hot and cold contrast, so they get those different variations in temperature, adding things that add a different texture to them. So people sometimes carry things like, chili flakes, because you can add it to mashed potato and it makes it more interesting because it gives that flavour. Thinking about savoury depth, which we don't talk about a lot, but things like mushrooms, tomatoes, certain shellfish, certain cheeses, things like Marmite, they add really interesting taste. You can get what they call savoury bombs that you can add to food to give a savoury taste to somebody who isn't getting any flavour from their food. So they get really interesting taste going on in their mouth. So again, it can help them engage with food in a different way without pouring loads of salt on or adding loads of sugar. If somebody has parosmia, then actually it's understanding, well, which food is unpleasant, keeping a list of those unpleasant foods, so that if somebody that make, where there's an unpleasant smell or flavour or taste, so when they go to somebody's house or nobody cooks those foods, and it avoids people being upset by the fact that makes them feel really ill. But there's lots of other hints and tips on our website, but that gives you some more information there. And then just some basic stuff around food safety. If you live with somebody that can smell and you can't, ask them to sniff things before you eat it to make sure it's okay. Stick to best before end date is really important. At one point last year, Marks and Spencer's and Morrison's, to name a few, were going to take the date off milk, saying it's all right, you can do the sniff test. To which Duncan went, well, you can't if you can't smell. So that was something we had changed. Certainly when you forget how long food has been open in your fridge for, it's really important to put a date on it to say when it's been opened, because if you can't smell to check it's gone off, at least maybe on the second or third day you have to think, maybe I shouldn't eat it. I also forget how long a packet of bacon's been open, so it's just a basic thing to do. Visual signs, it's more likely to be fruit and veg. You don't tend to get food poisoning from that, but you'll have visual signs. And then with domestic hygiene, again, basic stuff. If somebody's cleaning and they have a smell disorder, make sure the windows are open. Don't mix products, read the labels. Again, really basic stuff, but only stuff we think about if we're affected by a smell disorder. So as a charity, we're very small. We do cover the whole of the UK. There's 5 of us, so we don't have an inbound telephone service, but we do have an inbox. So we have a support and information officer, Max, who answers queries, offers one-on-one support, and is there to really give any support to our members. Free for anyone to join, whether you are a professional, a supporter, or somebody living with a smell or taste disorder. Once you're a member, there are regular peer support groups online. We do medical sessions. We are going to be doing one this year around dementia and smell and taste later in the year. We have newsletters, information sheets, videos on our YouTube channel, and our website generally has got lots of information. And we're really the only place there for people if they need that support, because we know that there's no training on the NHS in this and doctors aren't really interested. So we're there to support people if people want to become a member. So thank you for listening to me, and at least it started working for me, which was good. I'm just going to stop that. Excellent. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour.
That was
Just to give
brilliant.
you an idea.
Right, get your questions in the chat now, and Helen will pick them up. Helen, I need a rewind on the. So you're eating something.
Yes.
And then there's something at the back of my mouth that connects to my nose, so I'm actually smelling what I eat.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. So as you swallow your food, so you the back of your throat goes up to your olfactory bulb as well. So it's called retronasal olfaction. So yeah, as we chew our food and as we swallow our food and drink, the smell of that food goes up to the olfactory bulb to the back of your throat, and that's how you get flavour from your food.
I did not know that. So then, right, put your questions in. I've got another important question. So know that I haven't tried this. So if I that sort of dispels the idea that if I was eating an onion and I didn't smell it, it would taste like an apple. Because then I could smell it at the back of my throat. Have you heard of that?
Well, here we go. So there's a thing we do called the jelly bean test, and we ask people to demonstrate this. We ask people to hold their nose. We give them a jelly bean. They'll see what colour it is. Okay. It's got artificial flavour in a jelly bean. So they put it on their tongue. They hold their nose while they're doing that. And all they get is the sugar. And then we say to them, let go of your nose. And the flavour of that colour suddenly hits them.
Oh. Oh, so that stops that part working if you do that.
Yeah, if you do that, it stops it working. Yes.
Oh, okay. So then the onion test does work.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's a good one. I would obviously promote an opal fruit over a jelly bean anytime, because that is a great and we do that on long distance journeys. We'll go, oh, don't look, and then we put an opal fruit in.
Yes. Well, hold your nose and you wouldn't be able to tell.
That's gonna be my next trick. I'm gonna do that. I was thinking about parosmia. Have I said that right?
Yeah.
That's something we do hear of for people with dementia. That sort of distorted smell.
Yeah.
I just wondered.
And there's not a lot. There's not a huge amount you can do about parosmia. There are some people that talk about. I met somebody recently that puts. She loves going to festivals, has parosmia, so really struggles when she gets to a festival. One, she wants to take her own food in, they won't let her. So she knows the food that doesn't cause the parosmia for her, but also the smell of the food trucks makes her feel really sick. So she puts like a little clip on her nose to stop her being able to smell things.
Well, that's clever. Brilliant.
But the only other way you can do it is keeping that list. So you can say to people, please don't cook these things when they're around. It will really upset them, because it will. And if they can't communicate, depending on where they are with their dementia, that can cause the frustration, the anger, and that can almost be the point where they're going, why did they used to like that? And now they don't. I don't understand. So it's having that bit of extra knowledge, I suppose.
And I was thinking about distorted taste as well.
Yes. Yeah, similar thing.
Yeah.
Because again, although the taste buds have 3 pairs of nerves coming off them, so it's really hard to damage the taste buds. But obviously, if the part of the brain that listens to the signals from the taste buds is affected, then that could cause degusia, which is the same as parosmia, but in the taste buds instead. So yeah, a similar thing. But again, the reaction you might get from somebody who can't communicate that to you could be that frustration, that anger, throwing the food away, I don't want to touch it. And that can maybe help understand why people might react in that way.
I was thinking about Agnes Houston, who she would tell us, so she's living with dementia, and she used to be a real wine connoisseur, and then the wine just tasted the vinegar for her.
Yes. Yeah. And there's different ways, because you do taste wine through your taste buds and through your smell. So we actually have a couple of members who are wine sommeliers, I think that's the word, isn't it? And they still teach wine tasting sessions, but they've just learned to understand the taste of the wine on their tongue instead of, so there are ways around it. But yes, it is hard. Yeah. So it has changed it for him. But yeah, again, people talk about, it can taste like petrol. That's another common thing. And things like artificial sweeteners, if you can't smell, you don't get any sugar from an artificial sweetener, because an artificial sweetener works on smell if it's not natural sugar. So if you've got a smell disorder potentially, and you go, right, I'm going to drink Diet Coke, it might taste like chemicals to you, because you can't, unless it's natural sugar on your tongue, sweeteners don't taste on your tongue because they're artificial and it's a flavour.
Well, that's blown my mind. Mary said, what part of the brain is associated with taste?
Oh, now you're asking me. I could tell you that I've had a different slide. It's the gustatory cortex, I think it is. Hang on. Right, I can find out for
We'd
you.
go with that, wouldn't we, Mary? We're like, yeah, that sounds about right.
I can give you the full answer to that because I have I've just developed a whole thing around taste in more detail. So I will send you the actual exact medical term for it, but I'll tell you which part of the cortex covers, and I'll tell you the 3 nerves that go into the taste buds as well. So I'll send you that if that's okay, Mary.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I can remember going round to my old mate Peggy's house, and she's like, "Oh, I've made you vegetable stew." I was like, "Oh, brilliant! I love Peggy's vegetable stew." And oh my god, the salt level was just like, she was 80 odd years old.
Yep.
The salt level was just off the
Off the
scale.
charts.
So
Yes.
not only does the telly on full blast, the heating was on full blast, the
Yes.
salt was on another level. You know, where it sort of makes your eyes water. We're at
Yeah.
that stage with the amount of salt in there.
Yeah. The other thing just to mention, because I know you mentioned about toothpaste when we were talking the other day. So
Oh yeah.
certainly for people, well, it can be for people living with dementia, but certainly for people that are neurodiverse, it's quite common for people to really want a flavourless toothpaste because things like menthol can trigger what they call the trigeminal nerve, and it can be really intense sensation for people and they can't handle it if they've got hypersensitivity. Or sometimes the parosmia can cause toothpaste, if it's got flavour in it, to be really unpleasant. So that's why people may ask for flavourless toothpaste.
Oh, that is interesting. I'll, I'll send them. Or a nurse, yeah. I
Yeah.
know. We wondered if you'd wake up if we dropped those little bits in there. That's interesting, isn't it? Just thinking of like, yeah, this the smell and the taste just being too intense for
Too
people.
intense, yeah, it's quite common. Yeah.
Because it is intense, isn't it? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
minty fresh, but it,
Yes.
you know, it's really intense.
Yeah, definitely.
I was thinking about 11-year-olds. Do they not? They don't seem to smell if they don't seem to notice if they smell bad. Is that another condition? Is that
Well,
different?
it's actually it's a bit like menopause and pregnancy. There's a lot of hormonal changes going on in a child's brain around that age and into adolescence, and that does have a huge impact on how their smell functions.
Oh,
Now, we don't have that much detail on it because there's not enough research, and we're certainly looking into the pregnancy side of things because that can have a huge impact on the menopause. But yeah, that's why sometimes hormonal changes to the brain can impact smell and taste.
you only had to say pregnancy and smell, and I was just straight back there feeling sick about certain smells.
Yeah,
Just I
yeah.
was straight back in that, and I was, sort of forcing yourself to carry on, going, "Oh, that is an intense."
Yeah, I met somebody recently, well, not recently, actually, at a disability event. She had ADHD and she was telling me, and a lot of people get really emotional when they talk about their smell disorders because they feel like they've really lost something and they grieve for it and it really like it has a huge impact on their mental health. So when she was pregnant, she already had hypersensitivity to smell. When she was pregnant, it was so bad. She physically couldn't eat almost the whole pregnancy and never stopped being sick to the point that she said after her first child, she said she couldn't have another one because she couldn't handle the impact it had on her life. So it's those sort of things that people talk about. You just don't think about the impact it has, really.
It's almost like you take it for granted, don't you?
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
think about it.
definitely.
You take it for granted. You're going out for a nice curry, and it's going to smell like this, and you're getting
Yes.
excited. The poppadoms are coming out, the chutney tray, all of that, and you can,
Yeah.
and you just don't take it for granted. You do take it for granted, just that you're gonna
Yeah.
enjoy that because it is a
Yeah.
sensual experience, isn't it? You're smelling it, you're
Yeah.
tasting it.
Yeah. And a lot of our socialising is done around food and drink. So the people tend to isolate themselves because they can't socialise in the same way. They don't like telling people. Everybody you ever come across will go, I thought it was just me, so I've never told anyone. Oh, it's just my sense of smell. It's not important. And it really is. So, yeah, the more you share and tell people that we exist and we're there to support people, then and anybody else you think that might benefit from the session,
The
that's what
savoury
I'm here for.
That savoury bomb, when you were saying, so, if people have lost their smell, then savoury bomb sort of really enhancing the food.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
that sound. Can you just get that in the supermarket?
I think you can actually buy, they call them savoury bombs or umami, it's called, isn't it? Bombs, but you can buy them. Yeah, you can actually get them.
Right. Just putting that down on my little list. Have you got any? They're being very quiet, aren't they? I feel like you've just blown their minds with all of this stuff. They're being very quiet about it. Karen, oh my goodness, you don't realise how complex taste-smell connection is. Never mind hormones. I can't drink milk in my coffee since having my son. That
There
was
you
25
go.
years ago. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
mad, isn't it? It doesn't go away. You just
yeah,
got block.
yeah. It's weird. I mean, there are people still 5 years down the line that can't smell after COVID. You know, and it's just, yeah,
And if
yeah,
we, we were thinking about so people, you said about if you can't smell and you're just going off taste, that people with dementia, they're wanting sweet food, they're wanting
yes,
salty food, they're wanting processed food, they're wanting all the things that are bad, where you've got people saying, oh, my mom just eats cream eclairs, that's
yeah,
all she wants. And you think, well, how, so I suppose that is where those savoury bombs come in,
yes,
isn't it? But it is
yeah,
important for people to know about this, because obviously all of those are just going to impact on their health
yeah, yeah,
generally.
absolutely, yeah. Mary, in relation to the jelly bean test, so are there other tests? So there are a handful of smell and taste clinics across the UK. Actually, I think they're only England at the moment. Closest one to you is.
Well, I don't know where
Oh,
Mary is.
that's true, actually. So we've got one in Birmingham, one in Liverpool, one in Newcastle, and a couple in London, and we've got one in East Anglia. So, oh,
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Well, Mary, can I just say we have members from all across the world, so anybody can join from wherever. I don't know if they've got smell and taste clinics in the USA. I should know that, but I don't. We do a lot of work with the USA around this. But there are things called sniff sticks that they use in smell and taste clinics. It's very basic. It looks like a felt tip pen where they can do basic testing. For somebody that's living with dementia, that's not an easy test to do. And that testing is only really done in a specialist clinic because there's no regular testing like there is for eyesight and hearing. Nobody really thinks about how else to test it. There are some digital machines that we are trying to get introduced into social care settings where it'd be much easier to test. Have heard of the Mayo Clinic. But again, there's a cost attached to it. And until people realise the importance of smell and taste, it's going to be difficult to get people doing that.
It feels like, it has such a massive impact on people, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
Like,
does.
it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's around, like recalling those memories, how we experience the world.
Yeah, yeah, it really is how you experience the world. There's a video that one of our members has done. He had hit his head, really just doesn't know how he did it. He was out, knocked his head, lost his sense of smell. And he talks about how the world went from colour to black and white when he lost his sense of smell. It just feels flatter. And I thought it's a really good way of describing how how it is.
And I wonder if you're more are you using your other senses more to
You can do, yeah. So that's what we sort of encourage is, when we're thinking about food. So Duncan, who's our chief exec, it's a real foodie. He loves to cook. He loves going out for meals. But what he does is he engages with these other senses like texture and even things like hearing the sound of the sea can make it taste better. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can use other senses to engage with the world. Yeah, definitely.
Crikey. Right. Any more questions? It feels like we're sort of winding down. So if you have any other questions, please pop them in now. And I was going to say we'll answer them. Obviously, I won't answer them. I'll just talk nonsense, like eating onions with your nose pinched and things like that.
Wasn't a daft conversation to have that about the onion, was it?
Actually, all of my daft things turned out to be quite interesting, so I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked them. Never a daft question.
Never a daft question.
What else did I have?
And I'll come back to you about the exact thing around taste, which part of the brain it is, but I'll tell you about the nerves that go into the tongue as well and the taste buds.
Yeah, I was just thinking for a tip then. So, right. So for a family carer who's supporting someone with dementia, who's struggling to get them off a chocolate cake and eating something good, if they were just thinking simple tips for them to help broaden out that diet, what would they do?
Well, the first thing they could do is make the cake rather than buy one, and use naturally occurring healthy sugars like date sugar, which you can get from most health shops, stevia, which I think is from coconuts. So baking things but using healthier sugar alternatives is one way. And the other way is just thinking about trying to engage the other parts on their taste buds, like the savoury part, which we don't tend to think about that much. You know, when I had COVID, I couldn't understand why I could still taste tomatoes. Well, now I know why I could taste tomatoes. So I was drawn to pizzas because of the base. I could taste it. I was drawn to tomato soup. So think about, we always tend to think about sugar and salt. We don't tend to think about the other ones. So look at healthy alternatives, but also think about the savoury and get them to engage with that. And, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I've not heard that ever before.
No, because we don't talk about it.
People say, oh, he's got a problem, he eats cakes and he eats sweets, that's all he wants to eat. And you get that now, but there's not like and the solution is, you know, that is a solution, isn't it? Like really thinking. I think, did you say you've got a load of recipes as well on the website?
Yeah, on the website. So what I'll do is I'll send you all the links that I've made reference to, but there's loads of interesting recipes and hints and tips on the recipes page, how to engage with things a bit differently.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Helen.
That's okay.
Fascinating. I know that as soon as you get off this, you're going to go for a lovely walk.
I am.
Sunshine. Make sure you put your cardigan on because it is a little bit.
Yeah, big compliment.
If you've enjoyed this webinar, we have another webinar at the end of March with Kitty Short, and it's on brick-based brains, which is about entertaining, innovative, person-centered program that stimulates creative senses and promotes positive well-being, and it is with Lego bricks. So there you go.
I might come along to that. That sounds
fascinating. Honestly, I'm really excited about that one. So thank you, everyone. Oh, Emma said thank you so much.
That's okay.
Thank you for the information. Yes, join us again for some more webinars. Enjoy your afternoon or your morning, Mary.
Depends where you are. Yes, Minnesota. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not quite
sure.
Yeah. Anyway, you're gonna have an afternoon at some point, so enjoy it. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.